Hey everyone, welcome back to the YouTube channel of OCD Recovery. Today I want to talk about how the principles and the lessons and the ups and downs, the peaks and troughs, as Rob says, the roller coaster journey of OCD Recovery changed me as a human. I want to talk about the positives that I learned from my experience going through severe chronic OCD with anxiety and all sorts of different symptoms. The sensory motor, my fears of rejection, all the lying, my body dysmorphia, many different elements to my OCD cycle, how I've changed as a partner, how my work ethic has changed, why all of this was such a slow process that you don't realize it's happening. I always think about what Steve Jobs said in the Stanford commencement speech. If you haven't watched that, just go on YouTube and type in Steve Jobs commencement speech. It will come right up. It's about 18 minutes long. And he says you can never connect the dots looking forward. You have to trust in blind faith or believe in whatever you believe in. But you can only connect the dots looking backwards. And I love that, and I think it's very important. So before I go any further, please subscribe. Hit that like button down below. Let me know what you think about this video. This is going to be just a very meaningful video for me because all humans, even if they've been in a really low spot in their life for years or decades, when they get better or they achieve something for long periods of time, they can forget about where they came from. You know, so if you grew up in a very, very violent household, you grew up with no money, and then you build a business over 20 years and you become, a multi-millionaire and you live a very, very successful life. Because that's an all encapsulating experience, physically and mentally, it can be easy to forget about your past. Take my father for an example. He's been dead for coming up on 8 years next year it will be. I miss my dad and think about my dad a lot, but he's almost a faint memory, even though he's tattooed on my wrist. I mean, just the reality of it. So the number one thing that OCD recovery did for me was change my relationship with my wife. Number one. I struggled immensely with cheating. I had an extreme adult website addiction. I didn't see sex workers a whole lot, but I definitely saw my fair share. I had cyber sex addiction off the charts, messaging, numerous women. I had a lot of problems. I couldn't stay in a relationship. I never struggled with aggression in a relationship, even though I definitely had an anger problem, road rage and stuff like that. But I would just, if I didn't get what I wanted in the sense of okay, I don't want this anymore, you're getting close to me, you in a relationship, I just kind of want to have sex and go, I would just run and make up excuses and lie. I've done this my whole life. So I didn't like that about myself anymore, and I was about to lose the most meaningful person in my life, Erica. And she had caught me all this stuff. I mean, it was a mess. And I am over 3.5 years no fat, personal decision. You do whatever you want to do. I'm 3.5 years no adult websites. That was an amazing decision. Most people would benefit from that. I'm not against self-pleasure in all ways. I just think the person has to be realistic and look at themselves. I always say if there's 100 people in the room that can, that are not doing no fap and they're trying to explain to me what doesn't bother me. I know myself and I take the risk of just going with that. So it strengthened my relationship with my wife immensely. It made me realize that to not just engage in selfish tendencies more often than not. Selfishness is very important, and there are key elements of selfishness. This idea of selflessness is not real. That's a wishy-washy Disney fantasy idea. Selfishness has extreme benefits for your life, and you need to be selfish at certain times. Most people that try to be selfless and to be people pleasers too much and have problems. Anyway, so I want to compromise better. And I learned those skills in my recovery. And now me and my wife, we're married. We own a business together. We have a lot of moving pieces. We have a child on the way, but our relationship is exponentially better. And by me changing, it secondary bounced off and changed Erica in many ways because she went through her own journey. Would Erica have changed at the level that she did if she didn't go through what I did with me? I don't know, maybe. But I provided the horrific experience to both of us to grow together as a couple. And that is something I'm very grateful for. The second thing was my discipline and my work ethic. You choose exactly how you want to work and live your life. I choose to dedicate my life primarily to a mission. I love what Ray Dalio says. If you had a scale, savor life, sacrificial, dedicate your life to a mission, I like being more towards this and like really close to it. I'm not even so much in the middle. That may change in my life, but for the last half decade, I'm against that wall. That's a personal decision. It's a difficult decision. I'm very lucky that my partner's on board, and we also run our own business with numerous employees that there's a lot of moving pieces in my life. And I love that. I love the thrill of the unknown, and I love the thrill of that kind of jitteriness of moving towards a mission. And I love long working hours. That is a personal decision. But my work ethic and how I focus on the task at hand has immensely been benefited by my recovery principles with unconditional life acceptance and feeling discomfort. And I would not trade that for anything. Now, I'm a human and I get things wrong. I make mistakes. The difference, which is going to be the third thing that I'm very grateful for, that I think a lot of big names in fitness and business and men and women alike, they don't understand this because they've never been taught it. I think most of these men and women, if they learned it and were open-minded, they would adopt to that. And that is acceptance not meaning agreement, in the sense of you can go all in on something, but still accept yourself when you fail. So, and I've had many people argue and disagree with me this. I don't need to prove anything in that way. I just, if you don't want to live it, that's fine. You do whatever you want to do. But the anecdotal evidence is absolutely on my side. It's an irrefutable fact. I could name 5 names right now that most people watching this, if not ever, would know. High-end, like, go get it, the big names, the big ones on the podcasts. Boo-boo, no. She's barking at me. I'm going to shut the door on her because she's been brat. Nope, I got the door shut. By the way, that's another frustration. Oh, crap. If I lock the door on her, she's going to come in here and bark at me, so I have to do that. So, they believe in their minds, they believe in their minds that in order to go all in on something, and I mean totally all in, you need to have like a killer mentality of nothing will not make me succeed. Or if I do fail, like analyzing like why, what, or berating yourself. You can achieve many things in your life. Lots of elements of greatness. But when things go wrong, I don't want to live inside your head. Well, that's a benefit, Nick. I learned from, no. You can have the same mentality and killer instincts in like a marathon or in the business sense or protection of your family, whilst also having unconditional acceptance. Because athletes, high-end businessmen and women, military alike, do not understand or have any concept, not their fault, they never learned it, that you can have all those things while still accepting yourself as a human that will fail. And because I have that, if we're both in the same trajectory and we both come across a roadblock, you'll probably get stuck here and I'll be able to push you a little bit more forward, theoretically. Because I could just, I made a mistake. Let me just go forward and see how it goes again. I don't want to live inside the minds of so many of these people. It seems like a mental prison. No matter if they have millions of dollars or high-end accolades or success. I'm very content and happy with my life in all ways. I still strive for my goals. I'm very goal-driven and I'm very disciplined. But I also have the unconditional acceptance that I never need those things. Because when you say that, people are like, well, that is going to stop you from being successful. That is such a fucking myth. It is hard to even fathom how the world sees it that way. But again, I have to remind myself, as the sticky note says, think about how long it took you to change. And again, I have no need to prove myself to anyone in that way. I just speak, and if they listen, as Jim Rohn says, be a student, don't be a follower. And I love that statement from his 1981 speech on YouTube. Another great thing about what recovery has taught me is just the discipline in my habits, how I wake up, how I push myself in business with my work ethic, the gym, my fitness, handling frustration like my dog barking at me. Those things would not be where they are today, specifically how I handle the frustration tolerances of life, if I did not go through OCD recovery. I don't think so, at least. I can't see how any experience, there are not many experiences on this planet that are as dark and lonely as OCD. There are other things that are tragic, neurodegenerative disorders, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, losing your kids to cancer. I mean, there's a lot of different things. I don't like doing comparison. But OCD is up there. It's really up there. That's not feel bad for me. That's just my life. But I didn't want to be a victim anymore, which leads me into the last thing I want to talk about. Victimhood. There is no shortage of victimhood in this world. When someone goes through a tragic event in their life, like any of the worst things you can think of, whatever psychological and physical repercussions happen from that, at some point you have to take responsibility for getting yourself better. And when you tell people that, their initial response is, and if you're in this camp, you're demeaning of what that person went through. And I say, no, you're actually giving them more of a reason to be a victim, which is hindering their life immensely. Let's use a very tough example. You lose a child in a school shooting. And by the way, you don't do this off the bat because that would be insensitive and crazy. But eventually, if you want to live some level of unconditional life acceptance, and your child was taken from you and killed in a school shooting in America, that does come down to you. You don't have to like what happened, but hate begets hate. And the more hatred you have for the shooter, for the situation, which is totally understandable, and I could never relate to that. But that doesn't mean the principles that I'm talking about aren't what get you better. They are. Unconditional life acceptance. Of accepting your situations, dealing with all the ebbs and flows of the emotions, and realizing that it's my time after the natural grieving process, however long it takes, to get myself out of bed and build my life again. That comes down to you. And you can say that about anything. Because victimhood, for an extended period of time, no matter what you go through, will hinder your life massively. So those are the things I've learned from OCD recovery. Daisy comes in here, barks at me, breathes like Darth Vader. That's how she likes to roll. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Phil at OCDrecovery.com. Let me know what you think. I hope you enjoy this video. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day.